Welcome to the Evolution Show. I'm Johan Landgren. If you're new to the show, I'm a full-time investor and writer in sustainable tech. And on the Evolution Show, we bring inspiration and talk about smart energy solutions, electric transports, AI, and inspiration for sustainable living. In the previous episode, I talked about the future of Tesla with Tibor Blomhäll, president and founder of Tesla Club Sweden. Today's episode is part 1 of 2 when I talk about the future of artificial intelligence, AI, with one of Sweden's and Europe's leading AI researchers, Fredrik Heintz. Heintz has been selected to lead one of Europe's AI networks and is on the forefront of the AI development. He shares some of his many insights and where the AI development might be taking us. In part 2 of our conversation, we focus on how the AI development is transforming the transport sector. I hope you like the content, and if you like the show and you want to support it, we really appreciate give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. As always, stay ahead of the curve and stay electric. This is the Evolution Show. Welcome to the Evolution Show, Fredrik Heintz.
Thank you very much.
You are one of Sweden's leading AI researchers, and currently you teach online courses in artificial intelligence at Linköping University here in Sweden. Can you tell us about your background and what you teach when it comes to artificial intelligence?
Sure, definitely. So my background is that I'm a computer scientist. So I studied computer science, and then I've been doing AI research for actually more than 20 years. So we started out building autonomous systems, as we had fully autonomous aircraft systems, in our case helicopters, more than 15 years ago. So there we integrated a large variety of different AI techniques into working robotic systems that we then field tested, for example, in different emergency response situations. So I come from the background that we want to develop this AI technologies, but we also want to make them work in practice. And today I lead a research group in the intersection between machine learning and machine reasoning. And I strongly believe that if we combine these different types of methods, we will be able to do more than either of their own. And the teaching, this particular course, the elements of AI, is really about teaching the fundamentals, the really basics of AI to basically everyone. So our goal is to educate as many people as possible, not only, for technology people, but for general audience. And basically the course provides this overview. And so this course is developed by University of Helsinki in Finland. And we have then translated it to Swedish and made it available in Sweden, and also offering university credits for this course in Sweden. And what I really like about this course is that it, first of all, goes one step beyond the buzzwords. So of course it explains the major concepts, but it also shows here are some real techniques, the actual how do the computer do this, for example, playing a 2-player game. How do you do that? Or how do these neural networks that are so popular these days, how do they work? So it goes beyond the surface and shows some example of what's under the hood. And the second thing that I really like is that AI is a very broad field. Today many people associate it mostly with machine learning, but it's actually much more. And I think that's another thing that it really manages to capture this breadth, even though it's just 6 short modules. So those are some things that I really like about this course.
Yeah. Recently we had another AI researcher and writer, Ole Häggström, on the show, and we talked about education, how important it is going ahead. And I'm really glad to hear that you have it. You're offering it to a broad audience. I think that's really, really vital going forward. I mean, everything from a interested guy like me, or someone at university, or someone working at a tech startup, I guess, could take this course. So I thought it sounds really great. But let's say if you live in the US, I guess you're limited to Sweden to take this course, or could you take this online course from abroad?
No, it's for everyone. So I mean, the open online course, I mean, it's available in, I mean, it's available in English. So basically, if you speak English, it's available. And actually, it's made available in most European languages. So I mean, it's also in German and French and Finnish and so on and so forth. So actually, it is truly available to on a global scale.
Great to hear that. Okay, but if you look at your own research, what have you been focused on recently, or and what are you particularly excited about right now?
So, I mean, I think two things that I'm really excited about is first of all, the work that we do on synthetic data generation. So there's a lot of talk about that. Of course, we want to maintain this kind of privacy and integrity and so on. But at the same time, there is a lot of data out there that we would like to use for good usages. I mean, for example, medical data about patients and so on. So one thing that we have been working on is to develop methods for generating synthetic data for time series data. So I mean, there's been this kind of very impressive result when it comes to images. So basically, I mean, learning, for example, images of faces and being able to generate very human-looking faces that you can basically not distinguish from real people. So what we're interested in is doing the same, but for much more general time series data, which is a much more challenging problem. So for example, movement, how people move around, so that you have kind of, say, the location of people from their GPS or something like that. And then you learn how do people normally move around in this city or in this area, so that you can generate new movement patterns without associating with any particular individuals. So that's one area where we're doing a lot of research at the moment. The second is, well, it has a kind of complicated name in the kind of utilitarian combinatorial assignment. But basically the challenge here is that you have a bunch of, agents that can do things. You have a bunch of goals or tasks that you want to carry out. And now the question is, how do you form teams of these agents and allocate these tasks to these teams so that all the things get carried out as effectively as possible with the highest possible quality. And here we have developed state-of-the-art exact methods, state-of-the-art heuristic methods, and now we're exploring how can we use machine learning to learn heuristics, so basically rules of thumb, how to solve particular instances of these problems. And there we have promising results that are currently under review, where we're actually able to generate heuristics that are better than the kind of human-made heuristics that we have that was previously state-of-the-art. And I think that's a very good example of this combining more kind of reasoning and learning approaches and getting better results and really being able to scale up this. So I mean, this problem, I mean, if you have the exact algorithms, you can only deal with like tens of agents or tens of tasks, very small problems. But by using these heuristic methods, you can scale it up to thousands, and then you're really making it useful. And actually, these techniques are used in commercial games since some time back.
So, but how does this technology compare to regular face recognition? You talked about reasoning and at the broader scale, so to speak. But what's the difference between your research now and, let's say, the face recognition we see introduced in traffic and so on in China, for example?
I mean, face recognition. I mean, that's a computer vision. So in some sense, it depends on what kind of data you use as input. I mean, face recognition is one particular type of computer vision problem. We are not a computer vision group, so we're working with, as I said, more this time series data. So, for example, say GPS traces of how things move around, as one example, and in the other case that I talk about this, I mean, utilitarian combinatorial assignment. There, it's more, abstract entities and tasks or things that you want to have done. So that they're kind of different types of problems. But if we take this aspect of transportation, both of these are highly relevant for transportation. So taking this second problem, it's all about. So in some sense, there you could have you have goods that you want to have transported to different locations, and now the question is, how do you package these goods into say trucks, and then assign each truck to a location. So then you can use this to kind of optimize how you deliver your goods. And this first part, this kind of synthetic data generation, it might be, here you might have the case that maybe it's not private information, in the sense that you have individuals, but rather you have commercially sensitive information. So that these different transportation companies might not be interested in sharing exactly what routes they drive, how much goods they transport between each place, and so on. But then, if we look at Sweden, we have this some goods model for how to the freight transportation in Sweden works, and that's being used by decision makers. So then it could potentially be that the different freight companies can share, in some sense, their general traits, and that these general traits of how they transport things can be used at the national scale to optimize the overall goods transportation, without sharing the local information from each logistics company. So I think there's actually a lot of connections to both.
Yeah, and we're going to discuss AI and transports quite soon, so we'll come back to that. That was interesting to hear you, and I can pick up on that quite soon here. So, but if you look at your own research now, or other research, AI research, on a global scale, where do you think the next area for AI adoption could come? You mentioned medical AI tools are developing at a fast scale, and that's a fantastic area, I think, for AI to be introduced. Where do you see other areas aside from transport and medicine, for example?
To me, what's making AI interesting is really that it's, from my perspective, it's a general purpose technology, which means that I think it will be amplifying every sector. So it's not, it's being used in just one, or that we see that it's rather the broad adoption, and that we can see that, as I mentioned, this kind of amplifying effect, that you get more out of your previous kind of approaches by combining it with this. And I think here, you have things like prediction. So basically, every system which benefits from improved predictions about what is likely to happen, that's a system where you can benefit from this kind of technology. And also this with kind of image recognition, recognizing objects of different types is something that's extremely general. And the same with, say, more natural language processing, being able to collect pieces of textual information from many different sources and kind of put them together and combine them or analyze them and structure them. And so, that's also a very general thing. Take basically all of that. A large part of the public sector is about manipulating text in different forms. So I would say that rather than pointing out any particular kind of application or domain, I think what's really interesting is that the broad adaptation. And if we take a more kind of technical perspective, what I really think is interesting there is this kind of combination of this kind of data-driven machine learning approaches, which are extremely useful and valuable when it comes to, for example, adapting to new situations, or where we kind of we have a lot of data that we can learn from. But that the problem here is that you also need this kind of guarantees and the kind of structure, the formal support that you get from this more say reasoning or say logic or whatever formalism you use based system. So I really think that this combination of these, that is where the really interesting future lies, and that also enables us to go from today's correlation based methods to move towards more causality based methods, where we actually have a direction. So if we want to achieve something, we can know what to change in order to get certain effects. So those are some of the things I see.
Yeah. And I totally understand that approach. I mean, if you read Nick Bostrom, you read Max Tegmark, they also talk about, AI moving ahead in all fields, basically. And that's something we will see more of in the next couple of years. And the change is exponential. So it's, the change is happening all the time. And it's interesting to hear you from a researcher's perspective, because obviously you see a lot of things other people's don't, on the forefront, I guess, of what's happening. So, but if we move back to transportation then, on the Evolution Show, we talk a lot about electrification of the transport sector, and I'm very interested in that, as well as energy solutions, moving away from fossil fuel energy and carbon emissions, obviously, which we really have to address, the climate crisis. And where do you think the AI tools could be used to decrease our energy use and the carbon emissions? And we have touched upon it a little bit, and you can, if you like, we can talk about the transports and so on.
So I think there are many different parts where kind of AI technologies will be very useful. I mean, one thing is just, how to kind of construct better batteries. Optimize the energy within the batteries, but also kind of how do we optimize the overall electricity grid? And if we can use batteries, say in electric cars and so on, as kind of intermediary storage, because in some sense the major problem with the overall electric system is really this: how do you store electricity? And today actually, most of it is kind of used directly as being generated, and you need a kind of direct connection. And I really think here is we have a very interesting opportunity in kind of diversifying the generation of electricity. Both with kind of local solar panels at the people's houses and so on, but also using say electric cars and so on as the batteries. But the problem is that you get a very complex system, and in order to deal with the complexity in these systems, I think that is where AI can play a major role. And I mentioned this with prediction as one thing, but predicting the demand in different locations and making sure that the power is where it's needed in advance and so on. So I think that's one major area, kind of optimizing the overall electricity system. The second is, actually this, when I said, optimizing the flow of freight, for example. That today, as far as I know, actually most trucks are not fully loaded, but actually only small portion filled, because speed is more important and so on. And if we can just use the kind of trucks and trains and so on that is moving around, then we could dramatically reduce the need for the number of transportation. So I think that's another area. A third, I would say in general, the place where AI can be used is really this. How do we use our limited resources in a more effective manner? By being able to better predict what is likely to happen, so that we can kind of produce just as much as we need, and that we don't, and that we can use for example, the truck is driving, or the piece of food that we produce, that it actually comes to usage rather than just being wasted.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Tell us what you think in the comment section below. And if you like the content and you want to support the show, we really appreciate a thumbs up. And consider subscribing. And stick around for the next episode, when I'm joined again by Fredrik Heintz, looking at how the AI development is transforming the transport sector. As always, stay ahead of the curve and stay electric.